In this video, we're going to address the most common and the most annoying issues you may be facing when you're trying to learn hard surface for Blender. Let's go. Issues that I'm going to discuss in this video are the most common problems encountered by beginners in hard surface in Blender, but if you're encountering something else, some other problems, let me know in the comment section. I'm quite curious. And if I'm gonna see many similar comments, I might just run a video on that. So let's start with the first issue, and it's gonna be my geometry doesn't work. So let's say you're starting to model in Blender, and you grab a cube, and then you duplicate it, you run a boolean on that cube, which will not work because our bool tool isn't enabled. So let's go to preferences, go to extensions and allow online access, and go to bool tool. There we go. Let's install this and save it. Now we can use shortcuts, like for example Ctrl- on a numpad. There we go. And when you apply the modifiers here, so you're going to go to modifier tab and you're going to apply this boolean, you will notice that if you go to edit mode, you will see n-gons. And you might be thinking, well, am I okay with n-gons? I probably should convert it to quads. You need to ask yourself a question: do you really need to do this, right? Or what's the purpose of your model? Because it's important. Topology should follow a purpose. If your model doesn't have to be converted into quad mesh, then don't bother with it because it's a waste of time. We have an entire game asset course based on n-gon mesh, and it's fine. Anyone in the industry that actually knows what they're doing, they will tell you that you don't really need quads in every single model. Okay, there are specific instances when you do need quads, for example, for a mesh that's gonna deform, for certain VFX and video production assets. Not all of them, mind you, some stuff in the background doesn't even need to be in quads. I had a discussion with a guy from Pixar recently who's gonna be, by the way, creating an animation part in one of our courses for a Mac. But he said that even in some of the characters in Pixar animations, there are n-gons in areas when you can't see the deformation. So, don't obsess over topology because it's a waste of time at your stage. At your stage, what you should be doing is learning the UI, learning the basic concepts of design, blockouts, progression to details, texturing, rendering, all that. Don't worry about the technical sides of topology because honestly it's going to be too confusing, too taxing, and you may even give up. A lot of people say that when they started learning 3D, the issue was that they not only had to learn how to use the software, start thinking in 3D terms, but also worry about topology. It's just too much and it's really unnecessary. We have a fantastic beginners course, the hard surface accelerator. And by the way, if you click a link in the video description, go to our page, you're gonna get 40% off the deal. This course is phenomenal. It's gonna give you very solid foundations for exactly what you need, which is the UI, all the tools you need and nothing else. It's gonna bring you through a journey of modeling a Mac, texturing it, rendering it to create your first portfolio piece, which is literally what matters most at the beginning, okay? Once you master the basics, you can move on to more complex subjects, like for example, topology issue, okay? So click on the link in the video description, grab the course and enjoy. We have thousands of students in that course and they really love it. All right, so going back to our problems with Blender, let's just Alt-Z this to move back in time to this boolean stage here when the boolean was actually live, and I'm going to move it gx on x-axis so it doesn't cross the y-axis here. Let's say that you had this boolean and now you wanted to mirror it across, so you're gonna go here to generate, you're gonna click on mirror and everything disappears. You're like, what the hell, where's my boolean? Well, let me explain you the insanity of vanilla Blender mirror, which is really unintuitive. And also of the modifier stack, which is very important. So the way the modifiers are arranged, the order in which they appear, it's really important. And this is going to trip you over all the time if you're not using add-ons like Hardops and Boxcutter. So the reason why your boolean doesn't work is because of how this mirror is actually mirroring the mesh. It's mirroring along the x-axis, which is here, right? That's y and that's x. From right side to the left side. So what I would need to do, I would need to move this cube to the other side. So in addition to that, what you need to do is to bisect it and flip it, okay? And if you wanted to mirror this from left to right, you're going to move it backwards and you're going to disable the flip, because now it's mirroring from left to right. Okay, so see, that's the problem with vanilla mirror, and it can be really confusing, which is why I highly recommend you're gonna be using Hardops mirror, which is way easier. Because when I'm gonna add a cube here, right, and I'm going to boolean this with box cutter, I press Alt X, press on a direction from which I want to mirror, and I'm done. I don't have to think what mirror axis, where am I. It's, especially when you start rotating stuff in Blender and you're gonna add a local axis, you're gonna get mighty confused. So, forget the vanilla Blender. Once you know that mirror is there, just use Hardops, because it's so much better and gonna save you so much time and headache. You see all these gray hair? It's vanilla Blender, mate. Partly marriage. But anyway, another reason why this would be, kind of invisible is the modifier stack. So let me show you. With this option here enabled bisect, right? Which means now what we do, we're mirroring from left to right and we're bisecting it. Cool, now it's working. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move this mirror to the top, and now our boolean is gone again, right? And the reason why it's gone again is because you are mirroring, right, before you boolean it. So first you mirror and then you boolean. You need to have this order set correctly in order to first boolean and then mirror that effect to the other side. You get it? So that's why order of modifiers is important, and you're gonna see it also in other examples later on. Another reason why your boolean may not work is because of something that's called flipped geometry. In other words, geometry that's actually turned inside out. Now when I'm going to go here and turn on the face orientation, you'll see my mesh is going to turn into psychedelic blue. Blue is good and red is bad. So if I'm going to go here, select this mesh, go to tab, press 3 for face and delete that face, you'll see inside of the mesh is red. Because all the faces, when oriented correctly, should be facing with a red color inside of your mesh. And when they flipped, that's what you call flip geometry. So occasionally what might happen, right, when I'm going to apply this boolean here, there you go. So now if I'm going to grab these faces here and press Alt-N and flip them, you'll see my mesh is going to be red. And that's bad, okay? Now in order not to see, just as a tip, the psychedelic blue, what you can do is go here to Edit Preferences and go to Themes, go to Viewport, 3D Viewport, scroll down to this face orientation front and reduce the alpha slider to 0 and save prefs, and that way you will only see the red, which is flipped geometry, right? Let me just fill this face here with F, so we're good, right? So if this is gonna happen, if you're gonna run a bevel on top of this, it will not work. So let me show you very quickly. See, this happens, right? Because now bevel, instead of wrapping around the corner, it goes the other way around. It flips, right? So you got this disaster. So in order to fix this, you want to go to edit mode, press 3 for faces, press A to select everything, Alt N, and recalculate all the faces outside, which means blue gonna be outside, red's gonna be inside. Now it's peachy, right? And the last one I'm gonna show is booleans is when you cut something on the same level. When I'm going to add a cube here, you will see they're gonna have this weird kind of like a psychedelic lines going all around the mesh, right? That's called Z-fighting. And Z-fighting is basically when you have two surfaces laying on the same space, overlapping, right, in 3D viewport. And Blender doesn't know which one is on top, so they kind of fight for the importance. That's why it's called Z-fighting. So when this happens, you basically have to move your mesh, scale it, move it, whatever. But what I want to show you is something with the boolean. So let's move this on the y-axis here and scale it on X. So now let me show you what's gonna happen when I'm going to boolean these two shapes together. So select them both and press Ctrl plus for the union boolean, and you see that we're gonna have a bit of a mess, because when I'm gonna apply this and I'm gonna go to edit mode, and you see we're gonna get this overlapping geometry, double verts, double faces. It's a mess. And the reason for that is because this boolean wasn't set to exact, it was set to fast. So now with the boolean set to, the solver set to exact, you will see that when I apply this, we're gonna have a much cleaner situation. We're gonna also grab this boolean here and hide it because it's confusing. remember that you're going to be left with a Boolean cutter after Boolean operation, because that's how Booltool add-on works. And if you're going to go to this model here, press tab, and you'll see we're going to still have a little bit of a mess, but we can easily clean that by pressing Ctrl X to dissolve these vertices, Ctrl X to dissolve these, and you are left with a clean mesh, because when I delete that face, you see nothing is inside. It's a manifold mesh. You can even, remove this edge if you wanted to by Ctrl X and dissolving it, so you're going to have just one face here, and you're going to be able to bevel this without any problems, unlike the other mesh, okay? So that's how you can solve the problem of overlapping geometry and Z-fighting when you Boolean something. Another thing that might happen when you're Booleaning, you might end up with hollow faces. So when you Boolean something like this, right? After you apply the Boolean, so let me just hide that and apply this Boolean, you might end up with these faces here being completely hollow. So come on. Let's just grab these faces and delete them, right? And you're gonna see this, and you're gonna be like, well, where's my geometry, right? Sometimes Blender doesn't know how to compute geometry after Boolean operation, and it's going to give you empty mesh. Also, when you are cutting a mesh that's not manifold, this may happen too. So let's say that you have some kind of a model, right? And in that model, let me just turn on cavity so we're going to see the edges a bit better. In that model, you're missing one face. Let's say this one is missing, okay? And you don't see that, you don't know that. And you want to grab a cube and, you want to move it somewhere here, and you want to Boolean that mesh. So you're going to Boolean that, and you're going to be like, whoa, why my mesh is empty, right? Why are these hollow faces here? Well, because your mesh is not manifold, and you need to Boolean a closed watertight manifold mesh in order to, have these faces appear. So if I'm going to close this mesh, right, boom, these faces appear. The easiest way to find the missing face is to turn on this face orientation thing and switch this alpha, like I showed you here, under 3D viewport to 0, so you can only see the red mesh, right? So that would be about Booleans. Now let's talk about bevels, because they, these puppies also cause a lot of issues. First of all, when you're gonna add a bevel in Blender, so let's go to here to generate bevel, you'll see that everything is faceted, and you're thinking like, well, where's my bevel? Well, in order to make bevel a bit more round, because that's a chamfer, so if you want to create a fillet, then you want to add at least 2 more segments, unless you're going to be using a bit more advanced technique, which is called mid-poly technique, or mid-polygon modeling, which is going to be adding weighted normals on top of your one segmented bevel. But don't worry about it right now. This is a little bit more advanced, you're going to get confused. So in order to make a bevel work, you want to have at least 3 segments to make it round. But you can still see it's a bit too big, so I just, dial it in a bit. You can hold shift to slow this movement down. But, this bevel is still not smooth. It's kind of, faceted. So at the moment, the mesh is shaded flat. What you want is to be shaded smooth. So you right click the mesh and you choose this. But instead of that, I'm going to click on this one, which will also add something that's called auto smooth modifier, which now it's called a little bit differently. It's called smooth by angle. And it's actually doing exactly what it says. So it's smoothing the mesh of any angle that's below 30 degrees. So any mesh that's below this angle is going to be shaded smooth. Any mesh above that angle is going to be sharp, which is why when I'm going to add a loop here in the middle like this and remove this bevel for a second, and I'm going to grab this edge and I'm going to move it up, eventually you'll see it's going to snap. Boom. You see that? That snapping moment? If I'm going to go below 30 degrees, the mesh is going to be meh. You don't see this crease here in the middle. But when I'm going to go above it, I'm going to see a sharp edge because auto smooth kicks in. Now you want to use auto smooth together with bevels because that's how you work in hard surface, unless you work in sub D. In sub D, you usually don't use smooth by angle because you want sub D to take care of all the angles and all the smoothing and sharpening of the mesh. even though we flexed the angles on edges, we haven't flexed them on flat surfaces. You see there is still a bit of a wonkiness here, and that can be fixed by another modifier which is called weighted normal modifier. So go to normals, add this one, and this one should be at the bottom of the stack. Turn this rubbish off, this pin, put it up here, and this is a correct stack of modifiers. Weighted normal modifier should be always at the bottom, okay? And this is gonna be a bit annoying in vanilla Blender because unlike with hard ops, you're gonna have to move all the modifiers manually by yourself every time you're gonna be adding something to your mesh. Let's say we're gonna be adding, you know, a boolean, right? So let's just scale it down. And if I add this, it's gonna be added at the bottom. And now you see that my bevel doesn't work again because my bevel runs and also my shading is messed up. Look at this, right? And this is caused by the order of the modifier in a stack, because look what happens. First, the mesh is being beveled, then it's being smoothed by angle, then it's being weighted normaled, and then it's being booleaned afterwards. So the boolean cuts into the bevel. So what we need to do, I'm gonna collapse these so you can see them easily. We need to move this boolean, all the way above the bevel. Boom, now it works, right? Let's hide this for a second, okay, the cutter. Now it works, and now it's been booleaned, then beveled, and then auto smooth has been applied, and then weighted normals kick in, which is why all the surfaces looked perfect. And this is a correct stack of modifiers. If you want to add mirror to the stack, it's going to be even more confusing, but remember that mirror needs to be underneath the boolean and underneath the bevel, above the smooth by angle and above weighted normals, so literally in between the bevel and smooth by angle here. That's when you want to place the mirror, unless you want the boolean not to be mirrored. Then then you can just move it to a different position. Anyway, but the bevel is still having an issue, and you can see there's this nasty sharp corner here in the concave area. And the way to fix that, it's really simple. You're gonna go to geometry and change this miter outer to arc. And when you do that, everything is peachy. And just gonna tell you that if you're using hard ops, all these things are done automatically, including the modifier stack arrangement, so you don't have to worry about any of these. And for vanilla Blender, you're gonna have to do this for every single mesh, which is bloody infuriating. Now, when you're running larger bevels, you're gonna see that this bevel is not really that well shaded. We'll simply add more segments in this situation because the bevel is really wide. Now, when you're gonna be running a smaller bevel, let's say like this, you don't really need that many segments. 3 are more than fine. Now let me just apply Boolean here, okay, and I want to show you another problem. So let's say that, let me just also move this face a little bit here. So let me just press 3 and G and Y and move this face a little bit here. Now let me just make this bevel a bit larger, and you see that we're gonna get this nasty pinch in here. Every bevel, right, if I'm gonna run a bevel here, has edges that are running on its extremities, right? So this and this, these are edges that gonna end the bevel. And when these edges gonna meet in the middle, right, from both sides, so if I'm going to, let's say I have these bevels here, I'm gonna Control B, when they meet in the middle here, let me just press C to clamp them, you will get this double edge situation here in the middle. And this is exactly what happens here. Two bevels from both sides, they meet in the middle and they clash. Now when I'm going to go to bevel settings here, and I'm going to go to this option, clamp overlap, and turn it off, you're gonna have, North Korea basically happening on your mesh. So what you want to do is you want to decrease the size of this bevel until this issue here disappears, right? You see that? And this flipped normal settings that we have running on and this blue psychedelic color turned off, it's really helping now, because now you can clearly see there's an issue on your mesh and you can address it very quickly, because this is gonna appear in render as an artifact, so you don't want that. You never want your bevels to overlap. They will always cause problems. You see now the bevels are ending here and there's a flat face in between them, and that's why everything is shaded correctly. So don't overdo your bevels, because you're gonna end up with this problem, right? The last issue I'm gonna show you with bevels, I think, is gonna be scale problem. So when you change size of something in object mode, not in edit mode, if you go to end panel, you'll see that under item, your scale is going to be different on y-axis, on this axis, right? Than on the x and z, because we haven't scaled on x or z, we scaled on y, so it gets stretched. And when you're gonna be adding bevels to this mesh like this, Control B, you'll see it's gonna, go really weird. Unless this is what you're going for, that's not really how bevels should run. So what you want to do is you want to go to Control A and you want to apply scale. This is going to reset this scale here, and now your bevel is going to run correctly. Okay. Now, if you do this in edit mode, so if you're going to scale something in edit mode, you're not going to have this problem because your scale will not deform. It only deforms in object mode. So remember that you need to reset this, and it's going to, affect your solidification modifier, bevel modifier, array modifier, a lot of things. So remember to do that. Now, again, when you're using hard ups and box cutter, when you cut with box cutter, the scale is being applied automatically, so you don't have to worry about it, which is again why you should be using add-ons. But anyway, in vanilla Blender, that's gonna be a problem. So remember about that. Another common issue is when the shading goes wonky, and this could be caused by lack of auto smooth, lack of weighted normal modifier, incorrect stack of modifiers, overshooting bevels, flipped geometry, non-manifold geometry, so missing faces, random geometry or random verts, in areas you don't need them. For example, let's grab a cube here, and we're going to select an edge, and you're gonna split that edge. So right click and subdivide, and go to vert mode, grab this vert GG and slide it over here, right? If I'm going to try to run a bevel on this, right? So generate bevel and make it wider. You see, I can't because this vert is not letting me do that. You see that? So when I'm going to remove this vert, right? So Control X to dissolve it, boom, suddenly bevel works. And if I'm going to, remove the clamp overlap here, I'm going to end up again with flipped geometry. So be careful, because this kind of a small vert could cause an absolute disaster on your mesh. And for cleaning that stuff, I'm using usually machine tools, which is an add-on that costs, $5. And you can use a cleanup tool over there called Clean Mesh. You just press key number 3 on a keyboard, and all these loose geometry is going to get removed, which is fantastic, But in vanilla Blender, you're going to have to dissolve it manually or use limited dissolve, etc. tools in order to get it sorted, okay? And we talked about Z-fighting, so when two surfaces are overlapping one another, you know about that. So all these could cause shading problems, so you need to, always check for double faces, double verts, floating verts, loose geometry. And remember also that when you're going to duplicate something from a mesh in edit mode, it doesn't really create a new mesh. So if I'm gonna go to face mode and shift D and move it on the y-axis here, this face is still part of that mesh. So when I'm going to, let's say I'm gonna make this face a little bit thicker like this, and I'm gonna add a bevel to it, right, to this entire mesh. Bevel gonna be added to both elements because it's just one object. So if I'm going to, turn off this clamp overlap again here, right? The bevel is gonna work here, but it's not gonna work here because this mesh is much thinner, and the bevel cannot be so thick. Do you see what I mean? So in order to separate it, you wanna select this mesh here, press L to select all the linked geometry, press P, and create a new selection from this mesh. And now you got two separate objects, and you can lower bevel on this one, okay? So remember, when you duplicate something on a mesh in edit mode, it's still going to be a part of that mesh. Now another one is going to be related to sharp edges, and this is kind of going back to what we talked about in regards to auto smooth. When you, let's say, run a bevel, right? Okay, and you have, let me just put 3 segments here, and we're gonna have an edge here, and this edge is gonna be, let's say, at this angle, and this bevel will not really, when I'm gonna shade it smooth, and add weighted normals, this mesh is not gonna really get beveled on this edge, because if you look at the angle here on bevel, it's kind of the same as the auto smooth angle, which means this edge would need to be at 30 degrees in order to get beveled. So I would need to move it higher for this edge to be beveled. But what if I wanted to keep it at a low angle, right? And you know, without changing this value here, because this could also lead to problems, like for example faceting, you know, faceting your bevels, you see, when you go too high on this angle. So you want to keep it at 30, right? But you want this edge to be beveled. What you want to do in this situation, you want to change all your edges. So go to edge mode, select all the edges, to bevel weight, okay? Edge bevel weight, and then press 1 and enter. So you're going to change the, or just, you know, open this menu, change the bevel weight to 1, and you're going to add weight of 1 to all these edges. And then what you can do is you can switch the limit method from angle, so from this 30 degrees angle, to weight, and then you're gonna see a bevel here on your mesh. You can also add two different bevels. One is gonna be, you know, running on angle on all the edges, and only one's gonna be applied here to this weighted edge. But it's a bit more advanced, you know, you don't have to worry about it right now. Another way of sharpening, you know, this angle here, so let's say you don't have any bevels yet. Let me just lower this down so it doesn't really get smoothed. Another way of sharpening this one is going to be decreasing the auto smooth to match the angle of this edge, which is going to be really low. There you go, it's about 14 degrees, right? You see that? Now the problem with this one is that if you're going to add manual bevels to your mesh like this, they might end up, you know, being faceted as well, so be careful. In this case it's actually working, but if I'm going to add, let's say, fewer bevels, boom, you see, they're gonna be faceted because this angle here is simply too low in order to bevel this smoothly. So be careful. You need to sort of, you know, just, I know it's a bit more advanced, but this auto smooth value is really important, and it will determine which edges on your mesh are sharp and which are not. Another way of doing this will be marking this edge as sharp. So right click and mark as sharp, and it will show as sharp here. The only problem is when you're gonna bevel this, right, these sharp edges gonna extend and create these nasty, you know, situations on both sides, and you're gonna have to clean them up. Incidentally, when you're going to apply the auto smooth modifier for whatever reason, so let's say I'm gonna have, you know, bevels here like this, right? And I'm going to apply the auto smooth. It's going to apply sharp edges to all the edges on your mesh. So now if you wanted to, for example, bevel these two edges on the bottom, right, you'll end up with these nasty edges here on sides caused by sharp edges. So you're gonna have to go to edit mode, select everything, right click and clear sharp to remove them, which is going to cause this problem. But again, in this situation, all you need to do is again add auto smooth, and you're gonna be good to go, because now Blender knows which angles should be sharp and which angles should be soft. Make sense? And the last tip I'm gonna show you is my model is gone. So when you're gonna be zooming in to see better something on your model, suddenly this happens. And it's like, what on earth is going on with my mesh? That's simply a clipping view value, which you need to adjust in order to allow Blender to zoom in closer into your mesh. So press N, go to clip start, and change this value to 0.01, and you're good to go. You can zoom in closer. By the way, I'm holding control and pressing my middle mouse button to zoom faster. It's easier than scrolling, okay? It's just way faster like this. Anyway, that's it for this video. These are all the major issues I think you guys struggling with when you start hard surface. But like I said, if you really want to learn as efficiently as possible hard surface modeling in Blender, go to the video description, click on the link and get our accelerator course, because it will teach you everything you need to know and nothing more, and it's going to give you fantastic foundations for whatever else you want to do in Blender from now on. And like I said, if you click on the link in the video description, go to our page, you're going to get 40% off. So go ahead, click the link, grab the course and enjoy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.